Listen, we need to talk about the Blues this season, but maybe with a little bit of some outside perspective. Let's get into it here on Locked On Blues.
Hey, this is Brayden Chen.
Subscribe to Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, along with you talking all things Blues. Today we do have Hunter Hodes who is joining the show. But yesterday, as many of you know, my voice was gone. So Hunter is going to be a little bit of a voice of reason today, giving some outside perspective on the St. Louis Blues this season. We're going to talk some playoff hockey because I am biased and I still think the Blues-Jet series was one of the best series that we saw, besides another series that involves a former Blues coach. And of course, like always, my favorite Friday segment. But I want to let you guys know that there will be a bonus episode this weekend to make up for yesterday's lack of an episode. So just stay tuned to hear of Locked On Blues on YouTube. Hunter, welcome to the show. Welcome back to Locked On Blues.
Yes, thank you for having me. I know it's probably been a bit rough since the season ended with how it ended, but hey, I'm glad you brought me back. I appreciate it.
Always. So a little bit about Hunter is, besides him being the co-host of Locked On Penguins alongside Patrick, he also does Thursday's edition of the Locked On NHL show here on the Locked On Podcast Network alongside my friend Nick, who does the Locked On Oilers podcast. So it's a lot of moving parts. So Hunter has talked about the NHL playoffs, and he talked a lot about the Blues and Jets series. But one thing that Hunter and we got into this season was about Kevin Hayes, because obviously Kevin Hayes used to be a Blue and now a Penguin. And we just really went off about, I think, just everything between the two teams. But one of the big turning points was for the Blues with Dylan Holloway's injury, and I believe that was against the Penguins. And I'm not going to blame Hunter, and that's not what I'm doing. I just wanted to make that a known statement that it's ironic that it was against the Penguins. But Hunter, as somebody that has watched some Blues hockey this season, and especially the Blues and Jets series, can you give some perspective maybe as to how you felt like this series went? Was it entertaining for you? Do you think the Blues should have won that game 7? Like, can I have some of your thoughts as to what you did like about that series?
Yeah, I mean, like, they look like at the beginning of the season, they look kind of like a broken team. Montgomery takes over and they immediately take off. And that's the type of coach that he is. I think he's one of the top coaches in the league. They play very stingy defensively under him. They got the offense cooking a little bit. Jordan Binnington was playing really well in that series. And again, like, they took off against the Jets. Like, I picked the Jets to win that series in 6 games, but I knew it wasn't going to be easy. The Blues were the hottest team in the league going into the playoffs. But you saw the Blues get more comfortable as the series went on. Like, yeah, they didn't win either of the 2 games in Winnipeg, but you saw them take advantage of Connor Hellebuyck with the way he was playing on the road. I mean, his goals against average in that series was like 6 or 7, something like that. He was giving up way too many easy goals, not looking like the goalie that we saw during the regular season. And that's been an issue with his throughout his career, is that he's been great in the regular season, but in the playoffs, it's kind of dipped down a little bit. They dominate game 6. They force game 7. You're up 2 goals with 2 minutes left. I know everyone that listens to this show knows what happened after that. And, you know, I've said it on the national show. I've said it to Pat, like when we've done some of our playoff segments. Should the Blues probably have won that series? Yes, they probably should have, but you got to play to the final whistle there. And, you know, that's a great goal at the end of regulation. They tie it. Well, they tie it with that one. They win it later on in overtime. Like, I said it to you after. I think if the Penguins lost a series like that, I probably wouldn't come out of my house for a week, if I'm being completely honest. But sometimes that's just the luck of the dice. Obviously, it's probably still stings for everyone that listens to this show, but I think the Blues are still going to be a good team next year. They have ammunition to work with during the offseason. You saw how great the Holloway and the Broberg offer sheets worked for them. And, you know, I think they're going to be aggressive this offseason again. And with Montgomery still in the fold, you know, I think Blues fans have a lot to be proud of. Obviously, they didn't win that series against the Jets, though I felt like for over 50% of the series, I felt like they were the better team. But I still think they're going to be fine going into next season. I think they can definitely make the playoffs again.
It's funny, Hunter. You're the first person that I actually talked to after the Blues lost that game. I think it was, you sent me a text and you said that was brutal. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to do my show. And then a minute later, I'm live here on YouTube on
Yeah.
Locked on Blues. I think being a Blues fan, one of the hardest parts about the way that the Blues lost that game, besides it being double overtime, was the equalizing goal that Winnipeg had, because all season long, 17 times the Blues led in a last-minute goal. And this one just happened to be with 1.6 seconds left. I know Winnipeg fans come at me all the time if I say 1.7. It was 1.6. So I feel like that was a very brutal way to go out. And we're going to get kind of more into that series as a whole. But I wanted to give Hunter some credit on that one, because he could at least acknowledge, not being a Blues fan, but just being a hockey fan, that losing in that type of way hurts and it sucks and it's deflating. So for you, obviously, and I think this is good to have this kind of perspective, I can't get myself into this mindset of, oh, if I wasn't a Blues fan, this would have still been a really cool game to watch. I can't get there because it's too emotional. I can't even rewatch that game, if I'm being honest with you. When the highlights come up on my YouTube feed, I can't even watch it because it's that painful. So as an outsider, what was that game like? Can you give us some perspective on what that Game 7 truly, resembled? Was, because some people say it was the best game so far in the playoffs. I can't get there yet.
Well, I know that, but it was a ton of fun to watch. Like you look like you had Hellebuck on the ropes in that game. He wasn't starting out the game well, but he grew into it, I felt like, as the game went on, especially in the third period, especially in overtime, when he was starting to see more pucks, make more saves. And when you allow a goalie like that to really get into the game, you start to have him build his confidence back up. And you've seen it a little bit on display in this series against the Stars. He hasn't been nearly as bad as he was against the Blues. He still hasn't been in his regular season form, and that's why you've seen some of the talk about, did Jake Ottinger be the Team USA starting goaltender at the Olympics? Like, there's that conversation now. It's going to be, I think, a pretty big talking point this summer, and especially into the season. But it was such a great game because you saw, the Blues have that really hot start. Winnipeg, the Jets are trying to get back into the game, but it looks like, though, with 2-3 minutes left, like, it looks like they have it under control. Even when they made it 3-2, I'm like, okay, it's getting really interesting. And then, they really start pressuring with less than a minute to go. They shanked the shot. Honestly, once they shanked that shot, I thought the game was over. I didn't think the puck was going to go cross ice, but that was just some brilliant vision to get the tying goal with 1.6 seconds left. It really was a great game. Even the overtime, the Blues had some really good chances in that first overtime. Hellebuck just made some really good saves. And then obviously, what happened in double overtime. But it really was, to me, one of the top games of the playoffs. It was really just two teams just trading haymakers with one another. Blues came out really hot. The Jets eased themselves into the game. Hellebuck got more comfortable. And when push came to shove, the Jets just had that one clutch moment, especially in double overtime, to win that series. But it was, of the first round, it was still one of my favorite series to watch. It really was.
Yeah, and we'll dive more into that in the next segment. But I think that another question that I wanted to ask you, and this kind of relates more towards the Penguins, but Mike Sullivan, obviously, Pittsburgh got rid of him, which I was surprised about. A lot of people were surprised about. I didn't think that was going to happen. Obviously, he's with the Rangers now. For the Penguins, and I think it's interesting just to get this perspective while I have you on, what kind of direction are they going in, Hunter?
Yeah, so I was caught off guard just like you were. I mean, it's funny. I wake up the day they fired him 20 minutes after. I have like 20 texts on my phone, which is very rare for me. And I have a bunch of DMs and I'm like, what the heck just happened? And then I check my alerts and I'm like, oh, okay. So they let Mike Sullivan go. They called it a mutual parting of ways. But if you listen to Kyle Dubas and what he had to say, he fired him. Like he made the decision to let him go. And it's something that he even said that he was considering during the season, during a couple of their long losing streaks when they weren't playing well. He felt like a fresh voice was needed. It was something that I had felt like they had needed for the last year and a half. I didn't think it was going to happen just because after that season ended, Mike Sullivan said, yeah, I intend to be here. I'm going to work with Kyle Dubas. Kyle kind of hinted at that during his first press conference, but he obviously kept some things close to the vest because he fired him pretty quickly after. So they're going a direction here where I think they're going to hire a coach that has a lot of, development experience. Mitch Love, he's worked with the Washington Capitals these last couple of years. He's been also really good with Calgary's AHL affiliate, been really good in a development role. He's high on their list. They've interviewed Jay Woodcroft, who did a lot of good things with the Edmonton Oilers. They've interviewed Jay Leach, who has some experience with the Penguins organization, but has also been with the Kraken and the Bruins. So they're going after some of these younger coaches, not some of these retreads that can, A, see the development of some of their younger players, and B, kind of see the end of the core three era here of Crosby, Malkin, and Letang, and potentially well into the future as well. I don't get the sense that this is going to be a 2-year hire where, okay, you see us through like the big stages here of getting more high-end talent, and then we're going to toss you away once we're ready to contend. I think they kind of want to see it both ways, where the next coach can be here for the development of some of these younger players, but potentially into the next wave of contention, which is hopefully only a couple of years away. But that's the direction I think they're going in with this new head coach. And it's probably going to be named, if I had to guess, in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I think they're probably going to start cutting down this list pretty soon.
Interesting. Thank you for that perspective. Coming up in the next segment, Hunter and I were going to talk about some playoff hockey and my bias take. Well, obviously it's bias as to why I think the Blues added the most to the playoffs. But first, I'm going to tell you about my friends over at Game Time. There's nothing like playoff hockey, especially here in St. Louis, as we know, but the energy, the rivals, the nonstop action with the Stanley Cup playoffs is heating up, and there's never been a better time to see it live. And Game Time makes getting in the building fast and affordable. Game Time gives you last-minute tickets, zone deals, and deep discounts for panoramic seat views and all-in pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ticket prices often drop the closer you get to puck drop, so you can stop overpaying. One thing that I love so much about Game Time is that I can see exactly where I am sitting before I even buy my ticket. So I know exactly what I am going to get, as well as they have the all-in feature. That is right. So I can see all the fees included before I go to checkout, which is something that I have to say personally makes my life a whole lot easier. And speaking of planning ahead, the NFL schedule just dropped, and you better believe I'm already looking at my fall calendar and picking out which games I'm going to. Maybe I already did. And you can find seats for as low as $100 to an NFL game, which in my opinion is a steal. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Ooh, that was a lot. But you know what is a lot, Hunter? The playoffs being somewhat of a disappointment. So I'm biased, right? When the Blues were in the playoffs, my life had meaning. I felt like I had something to look forward to. Life was good. They get eliminated. I'm sad. I decided, you know what? I'm going to watch hockey still. I love hockey. I have to watch it. I have been so disappointed. Obviously, I knew that the Canes were going to beat the Capitals, but come on, in 5 games, and those cheaters, the Vegas Golden Knights, thank God they got eliminated. I cannot stand the VGK, LTIR, what they did to Marc-Andre Fleury. There's a lot of reason not to like them. Now, I do like, obviously, my former Blues captain, Alex Pietrangelo, but other than that, I'm like, come on, VGK being out. But then it's Edmonton Oilers. And we all know how I feel about the Edmonton Oilers and their ratty fans coming at my Blues fans because we acquired Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg from an offer sheet. Okay, I need to stop, trying to fight these Edmonton fans. They're obviously a better team this season. But, Hunter, right now, there's a couple of games that intrigue me in the second round. None of those games. Except seeing Vegas get eliminated. That was intriguing. But right now it is the Leafs and the Panthers because former head coach of the St. Louis Blues, Craig Berube, is the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I said at the beginning of this season that I could see him helping the Leafs get their first cup. Then we have the Florida Panthers with St. Louis native Matthew Tkachuk. And I love Chuck E. Cheese. Love me some Tkachuk, but at the same time, what are the Leafs doing? I had to turn off the game the other night. It is such bad hockey. Hunter, do you think the Leafs are going to be able to force a game 7?
As of right now, no, but anything can happen in this situation.
Explain.
This is the biggest thing. The Leafs had the Panthers pinned down on the mat, and they didn't go for the kill shot. You're up 2-0 in the series, 3-1 in game 3. Again, you have them pinned down. When you have a champion down like that and pinned down, you have to go for the kill shot and take them out right away. But you let them get off the mat, you let them regroup, and that's the worst mistake they've ever made because they've now rattled off 3 straight wins. They get especially the first one. They blow them out in game 5, which was probably the most embarrassing game of the playoffs so far. You have Leafs fans throwing jerseys on the ice. You have Steve Dangle out here throwing Batman memes on his.
Not even the final minute. Like this was like the second period. You see those awesome Matthew jerseys being thrown on the ice.
Yep.
That was bad.
Have Steve Dangle throwing out Batman memes with Bane on his live stream. But this is what it comes down to for me. This might be the last game of the Core 4 era. What are you prepared to do about it? They say you're frauds. They say you're choke artists. What are you prepared to do about it to try and change the narrative? I need to see Austin Matthews show up tonight in a big way. I need to see Mitch Marner have a much better game compared to Game 5 because I think he's actually been mostly pretty good during the playoffs. Willie Nylander, he's also been really good during these playoffs. I want to see him step up tonight too. John Tavares, his contract is up along with Marner's. I need to see those guys really step up tonight and send us back to Toronto for a Game 7. They have no choice here. Like that, this could be the last game of the Core 4 era. Winnipeg bounced back last night. They make it a 3-2 series. Biggest thing is they got to learn how to win on the road. Hellebuck and the Jets have not been good on the road at all in the playoffs. I took the Stars to win this in 7, and they might do it one game earlier just because they're playing really well at home. Mikko Rantanen continues to be insane, and the Jets just can't play on the road. But hey, all it takes is one to change, well, at least to start to change that narrative and send it back to Winnipeg for a 7th game because that's going to be a crazy crowd. You talked about the Edmonton-Vegas series. I get it. A lot of people hate Vegas. Obvious reasons. I 100% understand it. I think Mark Stone is a lot of fun to watch. Complete psychopath on the ice. Sucks that he was hurt. Jack Eichel, I felt like, had a really good series. But Edmonton, A, they defended well. B, Stuart Skinner and Cal Pickard outplayed Aiden Hill in that series, which I can't believe I'm saying because both have not really been that good all season. Cal Pickard had a nice heater in the playoffs until he got a bit banged up. Stuart Skinner was not good, at least to start the series, but then had back-to-back shutouts. But Edmonton's depth, B, really stepped up. They outplayed Vegas's depth in this series. Obviously, they got the contributions from the star players, but this was a complete butt-whooping from the Oilers, and I didn't really see that coming. So I'll take the L on that one. Carolina, Washington. I took Carolina in 7, but Washington's finishing really just kind of caved in a little bit. They were the top finishing team in the league, kind of comparing to the 96 Penguins with the way they were finishing chances this season. But it dried up because the Hurricanes play a very stingy style. Is it boring? Sure, but Hurricanes fans aren't going to care about that. They're in their second Eastern Conference final in the last 3 years, and they more than deserve to win that series. Freddie Anderson was great, but the Capitals, their goal scoring dried up when it couldn't, and that's the reason why they lost the series. I've had a lot of fun watching a lot of these series. To be completely honest, I think 3 of the 4 in the second round have been a lot more fun than the Carolina-Washington one was, but I feel like a lot of these series have been really good puck, and if we do get, for example, Edmonton, Dallas, and Carolina, Florida in the conference final, I think those are going to be 2 really fun matchups to watch.
Yes and no. So, okay, first off, I had Dallas sweeping the Jets just because, in my opinion, Dallas is a much better team than the Jets. I watch a lot of Central Division hockey, so I'm a little bit biased in my take on that one. I had the Canes actually sweeping the Capitals. I had 2 sweeps, and those were my 2 sweeps. I had the Panthers in 7. That was my other take. And then with who else did I have? Oilers and Vegas. Actually, I had Vegas in 6. So I was a little surprised, only because of Edmonton having health issues towards the end of their season. That was like the only reason why I was like, oh, maybe not. But the thing is, and I think with the Leafs, they're such an interesting team, right? Because you do have a guy like Mitch Marner who's going to be up basically at the end of the season. for whenever their season comes to an end. I hope he comes to St. Louis. Now, I know I say that about a lot of star players, but I feel like St. Louis is a very attractive team to come to. And again, folks who are watching, we're going to get into that next week as to why I believe the Blues have a lot of attractive qualities about them. But for me, that is a player that I feel like would fit in really well. Obviously, I'm hoping for Craig Berube, nothing but success for him. I love that man. But again, I do feel like the Panthers are just a better team in those type of situations. And that to me is the series that is really entertaining. Now, if those Jets, I hate the Jets. I really do. Like, I respect them. I do. But because I'm bitter and I'm upset, I hate them at the moment. I don't want to see the team that eliminated me go on to win the cup. I hate people that have that mindset. Oh, well, they ended up winning the cup, so them eliminating us isn't as bad. It was still bad. 1.6 seconds is still bad. And while that goal didn't lose the Blues the game, it basically did in a sense. So, yes, I'm not going to be happy for a team succeeding when they eliminated us. Now, I can say that it was the 1 seed versus the 8th seed. I can come up with excuses, but as Coach Montgomery and as General Manager Doug Armstrong said, the Blues were healthy except 2 players, Dylan Holloway and Tyler Tucker, and everybody else was good to go, so no excuses. And I have no excuses. The Blues lost. They did it to themselves. The Blues made the playoffs so entertaining because I'm sorry, but when you have an 8th seed about to upset the President Trophy winning team, yeah, that makes for some good, interesting hockey. When you have the 8th seed win every single home game, that makes for interesting hockey. When you have the 8th seed team play such good, dominant hockey on home ice that the President Trophy winning team, the Vezina candidate, multi-time Vezina winner Connor Hellebuyck has to be pulled, that's when I put my hands up and I say there's never going to be a series that's more entertaining and thrilling than the finals in this year's playoffs. But again, I'm going to go on a whole rant. Hunter, you don't need to listen to that because we're going to do my favorite segment, my annual Friday segment called Are We Feeling Blue, where we discuss, was this a good week or was this a bad week for the St. Louis Blues? Obviously, not much has happened this week for the Blues. We do have a couple guys playing for Worlds right now, but I still want to focus on the season, right? Because the Blues' 2024-2025 campaign was still, in my opinion, a successful year. They accomplished what they needed to do. So I asked you on Twitter at Locked On Blues, what's your proudest moments that you had for the Blues this past season? Obviously, Hunter, I'm going to have you react to this too because I think it's important to get an outside kind of perspective. So this is from Brendan, and he said, playoffs, this team did not look good for a large portion of the season. I'm also proud of the win streak, especially for a team that usually plays down to lesser opponents. Haynes, I have to give Haynes a shout out. He jumped on my Twitter live when I was freaking out before we went to overtime in Game 7. He said their resiliency. I mean, this team had many problems. They were also rebuilding at the start of the season, and they did struggle early on, but they never let those losses dispel them. It showed their resilience, especially after the Four Nations break. Ted said the 12-game win streak, and then Ryan, the last one I'm going to react to, said the next man up attitude, always and never backing down. So, Hunter, I'm going to ask you, if you had to give the Blues one positive take from their season, what would it be in your opinion as somebody that's not a Blues fan, but just a hockey fan?
Honestly, is that they exceeded a lot of expectations. I mean, I didn't have them as a playoff team coming into the year. I kind of felt like they were going to be, in the hunt for a spot, but I didn't see them getting in just because when I looked at that roster, I was kind of like, okay, like there's some pieces here. I like the aggression, especially with Holloway, with Broberg, but I still, when I looked at some of the other teams in the Western Conference, I just felt like there were more teams that were deeper. Yes, I did have Vancouver getting in the playoffs, and we all saw how much that was a mess this year with Pettersson and Miller. It was, and Tocchet leaves and he goes to Philadelphia and all that good stuff. So complete mess of a season for them. So I'll take the L on not having the Blues in the playoffs, but I still feel like they exceeded expectations this year, and especially I think Cam Fowler might have found the fountain of youth for the Blues this year. He looked like someone who was kind of reaching the end of his career, and then he gets traded to St. Louis, and it looks like he's 23 again, honestly. And he was great in that playoff series, especially against the Jets. 2 goals, 10 points in 7 games. He led the Blues in points in that series. He was that good for them. And I don't know if you're going to get that type of production from him next year, but you could tell that the system fit with Montgomery has been really good. Robert Thomas was also incredible. Haley, I know you've been beating that drum quite a bit on Robert Thomas on your show, especially to Nick and I when you would send in shorts to us. He was great in that series, and I think he really continued to develop this year as well. So those are two of my big positives throughout the year. Again, once they got Fowler and he found the fountain of youth, he was great. Robert Thomas was awesome. But I think if they can maybe get a little bit more deeper on the back end of the offseason, I still think this team maybe even has a little bit more to give. As long as they have Montgomery and how stingy they play, I think they can definitely get back to the playoffs next season.
So one of my biggest, I guess and say, proudest moments of the season was something that's so minor to some, but for me, it meant a lot, and that was winning the Winter Classic. Now, I do understand it was against a team like the Chicago Blackhawks, who are not a good team, but that game had so much significance for Cam Fowler. It was his 1,000th NHL game, and he scored 2 goals in that game. And that game, to me, showed me, not necessarily about the other players, because I knew what they were capable of, but it showed me what Cam Fowler is able to do for this Blues team. And that, honestly, in my opinion, is one of the reasons why the Blues found so much success was because of Cam Fowler. I never thought a guy that played 993 games with the Anaheim Ducks was going to be as productive as he was for us here in St. Louis. And now I get a little bit concerned about what next season might look for him, just considering the fact that he had one of the best seasons of his career here in St. Louis. 7 years out of the playoffs for Fowler as well when he was with Anaheim. So it was a long time coming for him to be back in playoff hockey. Exceeded my expectations. That's why when Biz, by the way, I don't know how you feel about Biz, but Biz got under my skin when he said that he felt like he needed to see Cam Fowler step up. And I freaked out about it because Cam Fowler is the most productive Blues defenseman in the playoffs. But anyways, so that for me was a moment that I was really proud of because it just showed me that this team has a lot of potential and age doesn't always matter. We talk about age a lot. I'm sure you do as well with your team. With having one of the greats like Sidney Crosby, people bring up age all the time. But as long as you can still play the game and you play it to your best ability, it doesn't really matter if you're in your mid 30s, late 30s. What matters is if you're able to still play the game. So that to me was a moment that was special. Hunter, let the good folks here in St. Louis know where they can find you.
Well, if you want to follow anything Pittsburgh Penguins related, you can check out the Locked On Penguins podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, the Roku channel, all that good stuff. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. I host a show with Patrick Damp. You can follow him at Send Them for Wet on all social media platforms. And I also host the Locked On NHL National Show every Thursday, like Haley said, with my good friend Nick Zararis. We talk about the latest storylines in the NHL. Right now, a lot of it is the playoffs. And yeah, you can follow us there. Again, all the same platforms, as I said, for Locked On Penguins.
And finally, would you like to apologize to the fans of Locked On Blues for your Penguin, Mr. Rucker, for injuring my Dylan Holloway?
He did it. It was an accident. It was. I wanted to see Dylan Holloway healthy for the playoffs. Yeah. I'm sorry about that.
I was putting you on the spot. I was kind of making a joke because I'm salty.
I know.
Very salty. But it's okay.
Haley, it's gonna get better with time. Everyone out there, listen to this. The sun is gonna rise every single day. Once next season starts, you can flush it right down the toilet.
It's gonna stay forever. Honestly, it's one of those moments in Blues history that's gonna always stick with us. But Hunter, thank you for coming on here today. As I mentioned to all of you that are watching, my voice has been shot. And it's taken a lot of energy for me to even talk right now. So I do appreciate having Hunter be so willing to come on today's episode. Again, make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Blues here on YouTube at Locked On Blues, my Twitter at Locked On Blues, my personal Twitter at Haley T. Simon. We're talking all things St. Louis Blues. As I said, I will be checking in with you all throughout the weekend, hopefully reacting to Winnipeg being eliminated. Some sweet revenge. Hopefully. Listen, I'm petty. We'll talk to you all next weekend for me. And like always, how we end every single episode, let's go Blues.